Tonight we're walking through the quiet, rain-soaked streets where the last samurai breathed their final breath. Not on a battlefield, but in a rice shop. Drop your thoughts on honor versus survival in the comments below. Now settle in, dim those lights. Let's step together into a world where your sword meant less than your ability to count coins. You wake up on a wet Tuesday morning in 1868. The rain taps against your paper walls like impatient fingers. Your katana sits in the corner, gathering dust like last week's laundry. Outside you hear the clatter of wooden wheels on stone, merchants pushing carts full of foreign goods that smell like machine oil and broken promises. Your stomach growls, not the romantic hunger of a warrior preparing for battle, but the mundane emptiness of someone who hasn't eaten since yesterday's rice ball. The same rice ball you rationed like it was made of gold dust and unicorn tears. You slide open the door and step into the street. The world smells different now. Gone is the crisp scent of morning cherry blossoms. Instead, your nose catches the acrid bite of the coal smoke drifting from the newly built factories. It's like someone mixed wet dog with your grandfather's disappointment and called it progress. A merchant hurries past, his kimono replaced by strange Western clothes that make him look like he lost a fight with a tablecloth. He carries papers instead of swords, and his bow is shallow, barely more than a nod. 20 years ago, he would have prostrated himself until his forehead kissed the ground. Today, he treats you like your invisible furniture. Your hand instinctively moves to your sword hilt. The leather wrap feels foreign now, like shaking hands with a stranger who used to be your best friend. When was the last time you drew it? Not for battle. Those days ended when the foreign ships arrived with their black smoke and impossible cannons. You drew it last week to cut vegetables because your kitchen knife had gone missing. The irony tastes like copper pennies and shattered dreams. You remember your father's stories about the old days, when a samurai's word could topple governments and his blade could split autumn leaves in half. Now you're debating whether to sell that same ancestral blade to buy next month's rice. The pawnshop owner, a man who once wouldn't dare look you in the eye, now examines your family's honour like he's inspecting fish at the market. 3 children run past playing with wooden toys shaped like Western trains. They don't stop when they see you, they don't bow, they don't even seem to notice that you represent 800 years of martial tradition. To them, you're just another adult in the way of their game. You walk to the rice merchant's stall, your wooden sandals clicking against stones worn smooth by countless feet. The merchant sees you coming and doesn't straighten his posture. Instead, he continues counting coins with the focused intensity of someone who knows that copper is worth more than ceremony. 2 measures of rice, you say, your voice carrying the authority of generations. He looks up, unimpressed. That'll be 6 mun. 6 mun. Last year he would have given you the rice and thanked you for the honour of serving a samurai. This year he wants payment like you're any other customer. The transaction feels like swallowing glass shards mixed with humble pie. You reach for your coin purse, feeling its disappointing lightness. Inside, a few coins rattle like bones in an empty tomb. Each one represents a piece of your dignity sold off to survive in this new world, where honour doesn't pay rent. The merchant wraps your rice in brown paper with the enthusiasm of someone folding laundry. No ceremony, no respect. Just business conducted with the emotional warmth of a tax collection. As you walk home, the rain begins to fall harder. Each drop feels like a tiny accusation. The street around you bustles with activity. Merchants hawking foreign goods, students discussing Western philosophy, workers heading to the factories that smell like the future. None of them need you anymore. Your skills, refined through decades of training, have become as useful as a horse-drawn carriage in a world of steam engines. You can split a falling leaf with surgical precision, but you can't balance a ledger. You can meditate until your mind becomes still as mountain lakes, but you can't operate the machinery that now drives Japan's economy. You return home to find your wife mending clothes by candlelight. Her fingers move with practiced efficiency, threading needle through fabric like she's performing surgery on your family's future. She doesn't look up when you enter. The silence between you has grown thick as winter fog, filled with all the conversations you can't afford to have. The rice merchant asked for money again, you say, setting down the package. She nods without surprise. Mrs. Tanaka mentioned her husband sold his short sword yesterday. Got enough to eat for 2 weeks. The words hit you like a slap from a frozen fish. Mrs. Tanaka's husband was a foot soldier, barely qualified to polish your stirrups. Now he's making practical decisions while you cling to principles that apparently expired along with the shogunate. Your son enters from the back room, books tucked under his arm. At 15, he's already taller than you, with eyes that hold the gleam of someone who sees opportunity where you see only loss. He's been studying Western mathematics and English at the new school, absorbing knowledge like a sponge drinks water. "Father," he says, "Teacher Yamamoto mentioned there are positions available at the trading company. They need men who can read and write." You stare at him. Reading and writing, skills you possess, but never thought you'd need to advertise like a merchant hawking fish. Your education was supposed to be ornamental, like knowing poetry or flower arrangement. Now, it might be the only thing standing between your family and starvation. "A samurai doesn't work for merchants," you say automatically, the words falling from your mouth like coins from a torn purse. Your son's expression doesn't change, but something shifts behind his eyes. It's the look of someone who's just watched their hero trip down the stairs. "With respect, father, samurai don't starve either." The logic cuts deeper than any blade you've ever faced. In the old days, you would have disciplined him for such impertinence. Now you're beginning to suspect he might be the wisest person in the room. Your wife finally looks up from her mending. "The Matsui family is selling their house next week, moving to Edo to find work in the factories. The Matsui family." You trained with Matsui-san for 3 years, learning to move like water and strike like lightning. Now he's trading his heritage for a paycheck that comes with the subtle humiliation of taking orders from men who measure worth in productivity rather than honour. Outside, you hear the rumble of cartwheels and foreign voices speaking in broken Japanese. The sound makes your teeth itch. These merchants from across the ocean have brought strange ideas about progress and efficiency, turning your world upside down like a child shaking a snow globe. You walk to the family altar where your father's sword rests in its honoured place. The blade seems to judge you through its polished surface, reflecting your face back as a distorted question mark. How many generations of warriors does it take to produce one man who considers selling the family honour for grocery money? The answer, apparently, is exactly this many. Your stomach growls again, reminding you that philosophical debates don't fill rice bowls. Tomorrow, you'll have to choose between pride and practicality. The choice feels like deciding which arm you'd prefer to lose in a sword fight. But tonight, you kneel before the altar and try to remember what it felt like when your identity meant something to the world beyond these 4 walls, when respect came automatically rather than requiring a receipt. The memory tastes like yesterday's tea, once satisfying, now cold and bitter. You sleep poorly that night, your dreams filled with ledgers that multiply like rabbits and scales that weigh honour against hunger. When morning arrives, it feels like an unwelcome guest who shows up early to a party you're not ready to host. Your wife has already risen, preparing the morning meal with movements that can serve every grain of rice like she's rationing ammunition during a siege. The careful precision in her actions tells a story your pride doesn't want to read. "I've been thinking about what you said yesterday," she says without looking at you. "About the trading company position." You grunt, which in the complex language of marital communication means both "I'm listening" and "I'd rather eat my own sandals than discuss this." She continues, "Anyway, Mr. Suzuki from the fish market mentioned they're specifically looking for former samurai. Something about trust and attention to detail." The irony tastes like seaweed wrapped around broken glass. Companies now seek out samurai specifically because they're desperate enough to work hard and educated enough to be useful. Your class has become a commodity, traded like any other resource in this new economy that measures everything in productivity and profit margins. Your son appears at the doorway, already dressed for school. His uniform, a Western-style outfit that makes him look like a miniature businessman, represents everything that's changing in Japan. Education that leads to employment rather than enlightenment. Skills that generate income rather than cultivate character. "Father," he says carefully, "would you walk with me today? My teacher asked if I could introduce him to you." The request lands like a stone in still water, creating ripples of implication. You understand immediately what this means. Your son wants to show you off, not as a warrior or a guardian of tradition, but as a potential employee, a living resume with references that stretch back 800 years. The walk to his school takes you through streets that seem to transform more each day. Western-style buildings rise like concrete mushrooms after rain, their angular geometry replacing the curved lines of traditional architecture. The changes feel aggressive. as if the very landscape is arguing with your existence. Students hurry past, carrying books instead of practice swords, their conversations peppered with English words that sound like verbal hiccups. Progress, they call it. You call it the sound of the future eating the present. At the school, your son's teacher greets you with a bow that's precisely calculated. Respectful enough to acknowledge your status, but shallow enough to suggest that status might not matter much longer. He's young, probably educated in Western methods, with eyes that see opportunity where you see only loss. "Honourable Sir," he says, "I understand you might be interested in exploring new career opportunities." Career opportunities. The phrase sits in your mouth like a foreign food you're not sure you want to swallow. 43 years old and you're discussing career opportunities like a student fresh from school. But as you listen to him describe the position, managing shipments, maintaining records, ensuring quality control, you realise these tasks require exactly the discipline and attention to detail that defined your military training. The skills transfer even if the context has completely changed. The position offers a monthly salary of 30 yen, he continues, plus housing allowance. 30 yen. Enough to buy rice without counting coins? Enough to stop weighing your family's hunger against your personal dignity? Enough to transform from a relic of the past into a functioning member of the present? You find yourself nodding before your pride can object. The movement feels like admitting defeat and claiming victory simultaneously. Walking home, your son matches your pace with the careful attention of someone who understands that this moment matters more than most. The silence between you isn't uncomfortable. It's the quiet of two people processing the same complicated truth. "The old ways aren't gone, Father," he says finally. "They're just wearing different clothes." You consider this. Perhaps honour doesn't require poverty. Perhaps dignity can survive adaptation. Perhaps the difference between extinction and evolution is simply the willingness to change without losing what matters most. The thought tastes like hope seasoned with uncertainty, but it's more palatable than pride flavoured with starvation. You arrive at the trading company on a Monday morning that feels like stepping into someone else's life. The building smells like fresh wood shavings mixed with the nervous sweat of progress. Western architecture rising from Japanese soil like a cultural compromise nobody entirely agrees with. The manager who greets you moves with the quick efficiency of someone who measures time in profits rather than seasons. His bow is perfunctory, a social courtesy rather than genuine respect. You miss the old days when acknowledgement came automatically, before respect became something you had to earn with productivity metrics. Your responsibilities will include inventory management and quality inspection, he explains, leading you through corridors that echo with the sound of clicking abacuses and rustling papers. "We need someone with your attention to detail." Attention to detail? A polite way of saying someone desperate enough to count rice grains for money and too educated to steal from the till. Your military training has been rebranded as a job qualification, packaged and sold like any other commodity in this strange new marketplace. Your first task involves examining silk shipments from the countryside, checking for tears and inconsistencies that might affect pricing. You spread the fabric across wooden tables, running your fingers along surfaces smooth as water and strong as promises. The work requires the same focused observation you once applied to reading an opponent's stance before a duel. The silk whispers against your palms like secrets shared between friends. Each bolt tells a story of silkworms that died to create beauty, farmers who tended mulberry trees through seasons of hope and disappointment, weavers who transformed raw thread into something valuable enough to trade across oceans. But today, you're not appreciating artistry. You're identifying flaws that might cost the company money. Every imperfection you find gets recorded in ledgers with the same precision you once applied to cataloguing military supplies. The difference is that military supplies prepared for honour, while commercial inventory prepares for profit. Your supervisor watches you work with the calculating attention of someone assessing a new tool's effectiveness. He's younger than you by at least a decade, educated in Western accounting methods that treat everything as numbers to be maximised or minimised. When he speaks, his words carry the confidence of someone who never had to question whether his skills would remain relevant. "Excellent work," he says, reviewing your first day's records. "Your documentation is exceptionally thorough. another euphemism for the desperate precision of someone who can't afford to make mistakes. You've approached this commercial work with the same intensity you once brought to martial practice, not because you love it, but because failure isn't acceptable when your family's next meal depends on your performance. During lunch break, you sit with other employees in a small room that serves tea and rice balls. The conversation flows around topics that feel foreign to your ears: currency exchange rates, shipping schedules, customer preferences from distant countries. They discuss these matters with the casual expertise of people who've always lived in a world where commerce drives civilization. One of your colleagues mentions his weekend plans to visit the new photography studio that opened near the Temple District. Photography, another Western innovation that captures reality and freezes it in silver and light. The idea fascinates and disturbs you simultaneously. In your world, moments were meant to be experienced fully and then released, not trapped on paper like butterflies pinned to boards. You should bring your family for a portrait, he suggests. It's becoming quite popular among the professional class. Professional class. The phrase settles over you like an ill-fitting coat. Apparently you've become a professional without realizing it, trading sword calluses for ink stains and finding purpose in activities that would have seemed beneath your notice just months ago. The afternoon brings different challenges. A shipment of Western clocks requires inspection for mechanical defects. You find yourself examining gears and springs with the same careful attention you once devoted to sword maintenance. The mechanisms fascinate you. Precise, logical, predictable in ways that human behaviour never is. Each clock ticks with mechanical confidence, marking time's passage in neat quantifiable increments. Unlike the seasonal rhythms that once governed your life, these devices impose structure on time itself, dividing existence into units that can be bought, sold and optimized for maximum productivity. As the day ends, you realize something unexpected has happened. The work has absorbed your attention completely, engaging skills you didn't know you possessed. Problem solving, pattern recognition, quality assessment, all abilities developed through martial training but applicable to entirely different challenges. Walking home through streets now, lit by gas lamps instead of lanterns, you carry a small envelope containing your first day's wages. The money feels heavier than you expected, not because of its weight, but because of what it represents, proof that you can adapt without entirely losing yourself. Your son waits by the gate, eager to hear about your experience. His face shows the complex mixture of pride and relief that comes from watching someone you love discover they're stronger than their circumstances. "How was it, father?" You consider the question carefully. "Like learning a new form of combat," you say finally. "Different weapons, but the discipline transfers." 3 weeks into your new life, you've developed calluses in unfamiliar places. Your fingers bear ink stains like battle scars, and your back aches from bending over ledgers instead of practicing sword forms. The transformation feels like learning to breathe underwater, technically possible but requiring constant conscious effort. Today brings a particularly challenging assignment: negotiating with a Western merchant who speaks broken Japanese peppered with English words that sound like verbal hiccups. His name is Thompson-san, and he moves with the restless energy of someone who views every conversation as a potential transaction. "Quality very important," he says, examining a bolt of silk with hands that have never known calluses. "My customers in San Francisco, they expect perfection." Perfection. A word you understand intimately, though your version involved achieving flawless technique through thousands of repetitions, while his involves maximizing profit margins through quality control. Different context, same underlying principle. You spread samples across the table with movements that still carry traces of ceremonial precision. Years of tea ceremony haven't disappeared. They've simply found new expression in the ritual of commercial presentation. Each piece of fabric gets positioned with careful attention to lighting and alignment, creating a display that honors both the product and the process. Thompson-san nods approvingly as you explain each item's characteristics through translation provided by a young clerk whose English sounds like music played on unfamiliar instruments. The conversation becomes a complex dance of cultural interpretation, with concepts moving between languages like water finding new channels. Your attention to detail, Thompson-san says through the translator, very impressive. In America we say time is money, but here you understand that quality is time. The translation feels incomplete, missing subtle layers of meaning that exist in the spaces between languages. But you grasp his essential point. Western urgency balanced against Japanese craftsmanship creates products that satisfy both efficiency and excellence. During the negotiation, you notice how money changes the mathematics of respect. Thompson Sand treats you as an equal partner in this transaction, despite cultural differences that would have created insurmountable barriers in previous eras. Commerce has become a universal language that translates honour into profit and respect into mutual benefit. The deal concludes with handshakes instead of bows, contracts instead of verbal agreements based on family reputation. Everything gets recorded in duplicate with copies that ensure accountability through documentation rather than personal honour. The system feels impersonal but surprisingly effective. After Thompson Sand leaves, your supervisor approaches with an expression that combines satisfaction with slight surprise. "That went exceptionally well," he says. "Your presentation skills are quite remarkable." Presentation skills. Another rebranding of abilities you developed for entirely different purposes. The composure required for facing death in combat translates surprisingly well to managing commercial negotiations where the stakes involve money rather than mortality. "I'd like you to handle more international clients," he continues. "Your manner seems to put them at ease while maintaining professional standards." Professional standards. The phrase no longer feels foreign in your mouth. You've discovered that professionalism shares many characteristics with Bushido. Discipline, reliability, attention to detail, commitment to excellence. The contexts differ, but the underlying values translate across centuries and cultures. That evening, you sit with your wife, reviewing two household accounts with the same methodical precision you now apply to commercial inventory. The numbers tell a story of gradual improvement. Rice purchased without counting coins, clothes repaired with better thread, small luxuries that seemed impossible just months ago. Mrs. Watanabe mentioned her husband is also working for foreign merchants now, your wife says, updating records in handwriting that has grown more confident as your financial situation stabilized. Apparently former samurai are becoming quite sought after in international trade. The irony tastes like sweet tea mixed with bitter herbs. Your class has found new relevance not through preserving traditional roles, but by adapting traditional qualities to modern challenges. Integrity, attention to detail, personal discipline. These characteristics now serve commercial rather than military purposes. Your son enters carrying books and papers from his evening English lessons. His progress in the foreign language has accelerated since you began working with Western merchants, creating a family dynamic where traditional hierarchy blends with practical necessity. "Father," he says, "my teacher mentioned opportunities for young men who speak both English and Japanese. Perhaps we could study together." The suggestion reverses conventional learning patterns, with child teaching parent instead of the traditional flow of wisdom from elder to younger. But in this rapidly changing world, adaptation matters more than precedent, and collaboration serves families better than rigid hierarchy. You nod agreement, realizing that survival requires learning from anyone who possesses useful knowledge, regardless of age or traditional authority structures. The admission doesn't diminish your dignity, it expands your capabilities. "We'll start tomorrow," you say, after work. The words feel natural in your mouth now, no longer requiring conscious effort to pronounce without shame. 6 months later, you've become someone you wouldn't have recognized a year ago. Your morning routine now includes reviewing international shipping schedules instead of meditation, though you've discovered that careful attention to commercial details creates its own form of mindfulness. Numbers require the same focused presence that sword practice once demanded. Today brings an unexpected visitor, Yamada-san, your former training partner from the old days. He arrives wearing clothes that hang on his frame like surrender flags, his sword conspicuously absent from his side. The absence speaks louder than words about the choices available to men like you in this new world. "I heard about your position," he says, accepting tea with hands that tremble slightly, from what might be hunger or might be shame. "How do you manage it?" The question carries weight beyond its simple words. How do you manage the daily humiliation of serving merchants? How do you manage the transformation from honoured warrior to commercial employee? How do you manage to wake up each morning and choose survival over dignity? The same way we managed anything difficult to... You answer. One day at a time with attention to correct form. Correct form. The phrase that once described perfect sword technique now applies to proper invoice preparation and accurate inventory management. The principles transfer even when the applications change completely. Yamada-san studies your face like he's trying to solve a puzzle, written in a language he doesn't speak. Don't you feel diminished? You consider this carefully while pouring more tea. The question assumes that dignity depends on external recognition rather than internal integrity. But months of commercial work have taught you something unexpected about the relationship between honour and survival. I feel useful, you say finally. My family eats well. My skills matter to people who pay me to use them properly. Diminished? Perhaps, but also employed. The conversation that follows explores territories that traditional education never mapped. How to maintain self-respect while accepting orders from social inferiors. How to find purpose in activities that previous generations would have considered beneath notice. How to rebuild identity when historical roles become historically irrelevant. Yamada-san leaves with information about potential positions at other trading companies, though his expression suggests he's still wrestling with the choice between pride and practicality. You understand his struggle intimately, having fought the same internal war just months ago. The afternoon brings a challenge that tests everything you've learned about navigating this new world. A shipment arrives from Kyoto containing damaged goods, silk stained by water during transport. The damage affects product value, insurance claims, and relationships with suppliers who depend on maintaining quality standards. The investigation requires diplomatic skills that draw heavily on your understanding of honour, obligation, and face-saving measures that allow all parties to resolve problems without losing dignity. You find yourself mediating between transporters, suppliers, and company management with techniques that mirror conflict resolution strategies from your military training. The solution involves shared responsibility, adjusted pricing, and future prevention measures that satisfy everyone's financial and reputational needs. When the meeting concludes, your supervisor comments on your natural talent for complex negotiations. Natural talent. Another way of describing skills developed through decades of training in entirely different contexts. Your education in reading human nature, understanding motivation, and finding solutions that preserve everyone's dignity translates perfectly to commercial problem solving. That evening you meet your son after his English lessons to practice conversation in the foreign language that increasingly influences daily business. His pronunciation has improved dramatically, while your vocabulary grows through necessity rather than academic interest. Language becomes another tool in your expanding kit of survival skills. "Father," he says in carefully pronounced English, "my teacher mentioned university programs for international business. With your experience and my language skills, perhaps we could..." He trails off, uncertain how to complete the thought without seeming presumptuous. But you understand his vision, a family business that bridges cultures and languages, using traditional Japanese values to serve modern commercial needs. The idea excites you more than you expected. Partnership with your son based on complementary skills rather than traditional hierarchy, business built on the foundations of integrity, and attention to detail that honour your heritage while serving contemporary purposes. "Tell me more about these programs," you say, switching back to Japanese, but maintaining the collaborative tone that English conversation has introduced to your relationship. As you walk home together through streets now familiar in ways they never were when your identity depended on social rank rather than personal competence, you realise something profound has occurred. You haven't just adapted to change, you've discovered that change can create opportunities that traditional stability never offered. The transformation from samurai to businessman hasn't diminished you, it's revealed capabilities you never knew you possessed. 1 year into your commercial life, you've developed an unexpected relationship with mathematics. Numbers that once represented only quantities now tell stories about human behaviour, market trends, and the complex dance between supply and demand that drives this new economy. Your daily work has become a form of detective story where profit margins reveal character and shipping delays expose hidden truths about reliability. This morning brings an anomaly that requires investigation. Silk shipments from 3 different suppliers showing inconsistent quality despite identical pricing. The pattern suggests either deliberate deception or systematic problems in production methods. Your military training in recognizing tactical deceptions transfers perfectly to identifying commercial irregularities. You spread samples across your inspection table like evidence from a crime scene. The differences are subtle. Variations in thread tension, inconsistencies in colour saturation, minor flaws in weaving patterns that most inspectors might overlook. But your eye, trained to notice details that could mean the difference between life and death in combat, catches discrepancies that could mean the difference between profit and loss in business. The investigation requires visits to supplier facilities, conversations with production supervisors, and careful examination of manufacturing processes. What you discover reveals a complex story about economic pressure, family obligations, and the difficult choices faced by traditional craftsmen adapting to commercial demands. The first supplier, Ishida-san, operates from a workshop that smells like mulberry leaves and unfulfilled promises. His family has produced silk for 8 generations, but increasing competition from mechanized factories has forced him to cut corners that previous generations would have considered unthinkable. Quality has become a luxury he can't afford while maintaining prices that keep his business viable. Every thread represents my family's reputation, he says, examining fabric with hands that tell stories of decades spent perfecting traditional techniques. But reputation doesn't pay for rice or school fees for my grandchildren. His dilemma mirrors your own transformation from traditional roles to commercial necessities. Honor remains important, but survival requires compromises that previous generations never faced. You find yourself sympathizing with his struggle while maintaining professional obligations to your employer. The second supplier represents the opposite extreme, a newly established operation using Western machinery to produce silk faster and cheaper than traditional methods allow. The owner, a young man educated in foreign business practices, prioritizes efficiency over craftsmanship with the confident certainty of someone who's never questioned whether progress always equals improvement. Traditional methods are too slow for a modern market, he explains, showing you mechanical looms that operate with inhuman precision. Our customers want consistent quality at competitive prices, not romantic stories about ancestral techniques. His silk meets technical specifications but lacks the subtle character that distinguishes artisan work from factory production. The difference might not matter to foreign buyers, but it represents something profound about the relationship between human skill and mechanical efficiency. The third supplier occupies middle ground between tradition and innovation, a family business that has selectively adopted new technologies while maintaining quality standards that honor historical practices. Their approach requires higher production costs but creates products that satisfy both commercial requirements and aesthetic expectations. We've learned to speak the language of business without forgetting the dialect of excellence, the proprietor explains. It's not easy, but it's possible. Their solution intrigues you because it mirrors your own approach to professional transformation, adapting to new requirements while preserving essential values. Change doesn't require abandoning everything from the past, it requires choosing which elements deserve preservation and which ones need evolution. Your investigation concludes with recommendations that balance commercial needs against quality standards. Ishida-san receives technical assistance to improve consistency without sacrificing craftsmanship. The mechanized operation gets feedback about achieving efficiency without eliminating character. The balanced supplier becomes your primary source for products requiring premium quality. The resolution satisfies everyone's needs while maintaining business relationships that will prove valuable for future transactions. Your supervisor commends your diplomatic approach to supplier management, noting that you've improved quality while reducing costs, a combination that traditional business education rarely achieves. Your method of handling suppliers is quite unusual, he observes. Most managers focus solely on price negotiations or quality demands. You seem to understand that sustainable relationships require addressing underlying concerns. Sustainable relationships, another application of principles learned through martial training and traditional education. Understanding motivation, recognizing when pressure becomes counterproductive, finding solutions that allow everyone to maintain dignity while achieving practical objectives. That evening, you review the day's work with satisfaction that extends beyond financial considerations. You've solved problems that benefit multiple parties while maintaining ethical standards that honor your personal values. Commercial success achieved through methods that strengthen rather than compromise your integrity. Your wife listens to your account while preparing dinner, occasionally asking questions that reveal her growing understanding of business complexities. Your success has affected the entire family, creating opportunities and confidence that extend far beyond your individual transformation. Mrs. Suzuki mentioned her husband is considering similar work, she says. Apparently, several former samurai have found positions in international trade. People are beginning to see it as honourable employment rather than desperate necessity. The observation suggests broader social change that extends beyond individual adaptation. Former warriors discovering new purposes, traditional skills finding contemporary applications, honour being redefined to include activities that previous generations wouldn't have considered respectable. Perhaps extinction was never the real threat. Perhaps the challenge was always evolution, maintaining essential character while adapting to changing circumstances. 2 years have passed since you first walked into that trading company, feeling like an imposter wearing borrowed clothes. Now the work fits you like a well-tailored kimono, comfortable and purposeful in ways you never anticipated. Your desk has become a command post where commercial intelligence flows through shipping manifests and inventory reports instead of military dispatches and reconnaissance updates. Today marks a milestone. Your promotion to senior inspector with responsibility for training new employees. The irony tastes like green tea mixed with childhood memories. You're teaching again, but instead of sword techniques and battlefield strategy, you're passing on knowledge about quality control and customer satisfaction. Your first student arrives nervous as a cat in a room full of rocking chairs. Sato-san, another former samurai whose family circumstances mirror your own journey from the previous year. His clothes hang awkwardly, like he's still adjusting to civilian life, and his bows carry the precise depth that marks someone accustomed to military discipline. "Sir," he says, "I appreciate this opportunity to learn from your experience." The formality makes you smile, remembering your own first day when you treated commercial transactions like diplomatic negotiations between foreign powers. "Call me Tanaka-san," you reply. "We're colleagues now, not superior and subordinate." The correction confuses him momentarily. Hierarchy remains deeply embedded in his worldview, just as it once dominated yours. Learning to function in environments where competence matters more than birthright requires mental adjustments that go beyond merely changing occupations. You begin his education by demonstrating fabric inspection techniques, explaining how to identify quality variations that affect pricing and customer satisfaction. Your hands move with practiced confidence across silk surfaces, reading texture and consistency like a scholar examining ancient texts for hidden meanings. Every piece tells a story, you explain, holding a sample up to catch light from the window. This one speaks of careful craftsmanship. This other one whispers about rushed production and compromise standards. Learning to hear these stories prevents problems before they reach customers. Sato-san watches with the focused attention of someone trying to decode a foreign language. His questions reveal intelligence and dedication, but also the discomfort of someone whose previous education never included commercial applications. "How do you maintain dignity while serving merchants?" he asks during lunch break, voicing the concern that once kept you awake at night. The question deserves an honest answer, rather than comfortable platitudes. Dignity comes from performing any task with excellence and integrity, you say. The source of payment doesn't determine the value of your character. Your words sound confident, but you remember struggling with similar doubts when every transaction felt like a small betrayal of ancestral expectations. Time and experience have taught you that adaptation doesn't require abandoning core values. It requires applying those values to new circumstances. The afternoon brings a complex challenge that tests both your expertise and your teaching abilities. A shipment arrives containing silk that meets technical specifications but lacks the aesthetic qualities that distinguish premium products from acceptable ones. The difference is subtle enough that inexperienced inspectors might approve the delivery, but significant enough to damage long-term customer relationships. You guide Sato-san through the evaluation process, encouraging him to trust sensory impressions that his traditional education actually prepared him to notice. Years of tea ceremony develop appreciation for subtle variations in texture and colour. Martial training cultivates awareness of small details that indicate larger patterns. Your background provides advantages you don't realise, you tell him as he successfully identifies quality issues that escape the original inspector. "We weren't trained for this specific work, but we were trained to notice things that matter." His confidence grows as he discovers that skills developed for entirely different purposes transfer effectively to commercial applications. By day's end, he's conducting inspections with competence that surprises both of you. Walking home through streets that have become familiar territories rather than foreign landscapes, you reflect on the unexpected satisfaction that comes from teaching practical skills to someone who needs them for survival. The mentoring relationship creates meaning that extends beyond individual advancement. Your son waits at the gate with the news that adds another layer to your evolving family story. Father, I've been accepted to the university program for international business, he announces, his voice carrying excitement tempered by awareness that this opportunity represents a significant family investment. The news brings pride mixed with financial anxiety. University education costs money you're still learning to manage, but the potential returns justify the risk. Your son's language skills combined with formal business education could create opportunities that neither of you could achieve individually. We'll make it work, you say, meaning both the financial commitment and the broader challenge of building prosperity through education and effort rather than inherited status. That evening, your wife reviews household accounts that now include savings allocated for your son's education. The numbers tell a story about delayed gratification and strategic planning that would have been unimaginable during your transition period just 2 years ago. Mrs. Nakamura asked if you might consider training her husband as well, she mentions, while updating the ledger. Apparently word has spread about your teaching abilities. Teaching abilities. Another unexpected development in your ongoing transformation. You've become not just an adapter, but someone who helps others adapt, passing on lessons learned through experience rather than textbook study. The role feels natural, comfortable in ways that surprise you. Perhaps leadership was always your true calling, whether exercised through military command or commercial mentorship. Different contexts, same essential function. 3 years into your commercial career, you stand in a conference room that would have seemed like fantasy during your desperate early days. Sunlight streams through large windows overlooking a harbour where foreign ships dock beside traditional fishing boats, creating a view that perfectly captures Japan's complex relationship with change. Today's meeting involves establishing your own consulting business, a venture that combines your expertise in quality control with your growing reputation for training former samurai in commercial skills. The proposal rests on your desk like a bridge between past and future, offering independence while honouring the lessons learned through employment. Your potential business partner, Morrison San, represents a British trading company seeking reliable Japanese contacts who understand both traditional craftsmanship and international business requirements. His proposal involves creating a service that helps foreign buyers identify authentic quality while assisting Japanese producers in meeting export standards. Your reputation for integrity has impressed our clients, he explains through an interpreter whose English flows like music performed on Western instruments. We need someone who can guarantee both honesty and competence. Guarantee. The word carries weight that goes beyond commercial promises. In your world, personal reputation still matters more than written contracts, though both have become necessary for conducting business across cultural boundaries. The financial projections look promising enough to support your family while providing employment for other former samurai seeking alternatives to poverty or pride. Numbers tell stories about sustainable growth rather than mere survival, transforming your perspective from desperate adaptation to strategic planning. Your son attends the meeting as your unofficial translator and business advisor, his university education having equipped him with knowledge that complements your practical experience. The role reversal feels natural now, age providing wisdom while youth contributes technical expertise. Father, he says during a break in negotiations, this opportunity could establish our family in international trade for generations. Your reputation becomes our foundation. Your reputation. Built through 3 years of careful attention to quality, honest dealing with suppliers, and successful training of other adapting samurai. The intangible asset that matters more than financial capital in a business environment where trust determines success. The meeting concludes with agreements that require legal documentation, but rest ultimately on mutual confidence in each party's reliability. You'll provide quality assurance and cultural consultation. Morrison San will provide market access and financial backing. Your son will manage administrative details that require bilingual capabilities. Walking home through streets where you now recognise merchants, suppliers, and other former samurai who have found their own paths through the economic transformation, you feel something approaching contentment. Not the fierce satisfaction of military victory, but the quieter pleasure of problems solved and purposes discovered. Your wife greets the news with excitement that reflects 3 years of gradual improvement in family circumstances. From desperate worry about next week's rice to planning business expansion represents a journey that seemed impossible when it began. Mrs. Watanabe will be so pleased, she says, referring to your neighbour whose husband still struggles with the transition from warrior to wage earner. Perhaps this venture will provide opportunities for others as well. Opportunities for others. The phrase captures something important about your evolution from individual survival to community contribution. Success that creates possibilities for other people rather than just personal advancement. That evening, you sit in your study reviewing contracts written in languages that blend Japanese precision with English commercial terminology. The documents represent more than business agreements. They symbolize successful adaptation that maintains essential values while embracing necessary changes. Your katana still rests in its place of honor, but it no longer represents a lost way of life. Instead, it reminds you that character forged through traditional discipline can serve contemporary purposes when applied with intelligence and flexibility. The sword itself may gather dust, but the qualities it helped develop, attention to detail, commitment to excellence, personal integrity, have found new expression in activities that previous generations never imagined. You write a letter to Yamada-san, your former training partner who finally accepted employment with a textile manufacturer last month. The letter describes opportunities that might interest him, ways that military experience translates to commercial advantage, strategies for maintaining dignity while pursuing prosperity. Honor, you write, doesn't require poverty. Adaptation doesn't mean abandonment. We haven't lost our way. We've found new paths that lead to the same destination. The words feel true as you write them, capturing lessons learned through experience rather than inherited through tradition. Your extinction was really transformation. Your end was actually beginning. Outside your window, the city sleeps under stars that have watched countless generations navigate changes that seemed impossible until they became inevitable. Tomorrow will bring new challenges that require the same qualities that served your ancestors: courage, wisdom, and the flexibility to bend without breaking. You've learned to think of yourself not as a failed samurai, but as a successful human being who happens to have samurai training. The distinction makes all the difference between despair and hope, between endings and beginnings. The last samurai didn't die in battle. They learned to live in peace. 5 years have transformed you into someone you're still learning to recognize. This morning you stand before a Western-style mirror in your office, a business you now own rather than merely work for, adjusting a necktie that still feels like elegant strangulation. The reflection shows a man who has learned to inhabit two worlds simultaneously without entirely belonging to either. Your consulting firm occupies a building that bridges architectural styles just as your life bridges historical eras. Traditional Japanese rooms for meeting with local craftsmen connect to Western furnished offices for entertaining foreign clients. The space tells the story of adaptation without abandonment, change without complete transformation. Today brings a particularly complex challenge: mediating a dispute between a traditional pottery workshop and a German trading company over products that meet technical specifications but fail to satisfy aesthetic expectations. The conflict involves more than simple quality control. It touches fundamental questions about how beauty translates across cultures. The German representative, Herr Weber, speaks with the methodical precision of someone who believes excellence can be measured and quantified. His complaints focus on variations in glaze consistency and minor asymmetries that traditional Japanese aesthetics consider essential character, but European buyers interpret as manufacturing defects. Consistency is quality, he insists through your son's translation, spreading ceramic samples across your conference table like evidence in a trial. Our customers expect uniformity, not artistic interpretation. The potter, Miyamoto-san, represents the 7th generation of his family to work in clay. His hands carry knowledge passed down through centuries of tradition, understanding that perfect imperfection creates beauty that mechanical reproduction cannot achieve. To him, Weber's demands represent cultural blindness disguised as quality standards. Each piece has its own spirit, Miyamoto-san explains with quiet intensity. To make them all identical would be to kill their souls. You find yourself translating more than language. You're interpreting entire worldviews that seem fundamentally incompatible until examined from the proper angle. Your role has evolved from simple quality inspection to cultural diplomacy, bridging differences that go far deeper than commercial transactions. The solution requires creativity that draws on all your accumulated experience. You propose a modified production process that maintains the essential character Miyamoto-san considers sacred while achieving the consistency Weber's customers demand. 2 product lines: traditional pieces for buyers who appreciate handcrafted variations, and standardized items for markets that prioritize uniformity. The negotiation takes most of the day, requiring patience that your martial training taught you and commercial sense that experience has developed. Both parties leave satisfied, though neither gets exactly what they originally wanted. Compromise has become your specialty, finding third options when 2 positions seem irreconcilable. Your son observes the entire process with attention that suggests he's learning more than translation techniques. His education combines formal business study with practical experience, creating knowledge that neither textbooks nor tradition alone could provide. "Father," he says after the clients depart, "how do you know when compromise serves everyone versus when it satisfies no one?" The question reveals wisdom beyond his years, touching issues that experience teaches better than instruction. "You listen for what people really need, rather than what they say they want," you reply. Most conflicts hide beneath surface positions. The insight applies to your own transformation as much as to commercial mediation. What you really needed wasn't preservation of historical roles, but discovery of contemporary purposes that honoured historical values. The distinction made adaptation possible without feeling like betrayal. Evening brings a different sort of reflection. Your wife shows you photographs from the new studio near the Temple District, images that capture your family's evolution with silver precision that seems almost magical. The pictures show faces that have changed subtly over 5 years, expressing confidence that replaces earlier uncertainty. In the formal portrait, you wear Western business attire, while your wife maintains traditional dress, creating visual harmony between old and new. Your son appears in his university uniform, representing the future that your sacrifices have made possible. The composition tells a story about successful navigation through historical transition. Mrs. Tanaka asked if you might speak to the Women's Association about opportunities for families affected by the changes. Your wife mentions while arranging the photographs in an album that will preserve these moments for future generations. Speaking to the Women's Association. Another unexpected role in your expanding identity. You've become not just a businessman, but a community resource. Someone who can offer guidance based on successful experience rather than theoretical knowledge. The invitation represents recognition that your transformation has broader significance than personal survival. Other families face similar challenges, seeking paths between pride and practicality that allow dignity to coexist with adaptation. You agree to the speaking engagement, realizing that sharing your story might help others avoid mistakes you made while discovering opportunities you never imagined. Teaching has become natural to you, whether as training employees or advising community members navigating similar transitions. That night you review business correspondence that arrives from trading partners in distant countries whose names you couldn't have pronounced 5 years ago. Letters written in multiple languages discuss opportunities for expansion that would have seemed impossible during your desperate early period. The documents represent more than commercial success. They demonstrate that traditional Japanese values can enhance rather than hinder international business when applied with intelligence and flexibility. Attention to detail, commitment to quality, respect for relationships. These characteristics prove valuable across cultures. Your katana still holds its place of honour, but now it's surrounded by certificates, business awards, and photographs that document your professional achievements. The sword no longer represents a lost way of life, but rather the foundation upon which a new life has been built. Tomorrow will bring new challenges that require the same essential qualities your ancestors developed. Courage to face uncertainty, wisdom to distinguish between change and loss, strength to adapt without abandoning core values. You've learned that evolution doesn't mean extinction. Sometimes it means discovering capabilities you never knew you possessed. 7 years after your first desperate morning contemplating whether to sell your ancestral sword for rice money, you sit in a restaurant that serves both traditional Japanese cuisine and Western dishes, entertaining clients whose business cards collect in your wallet like diplomatic credentials from allied nations. The menu itself tells the story of cultural adaptation, familiar flavors prepared with new techniques, foreign. Ingredients incorporated into traditional recipes. Your dinner companions include the representatives from textile companies in Manchester, silk dealers from Lyon, and pottery exporters from Seto. The conversation flows between languages as smoothly as sake flows between cups, with your son providing translation that captures nuance as well as meaning. Your recommendation system has revolutionised our quality assurance, the Manchester representative explains over plates that blend British beef with Japanese seasonings. Our rejection rates have dropped 70% since implementing your protocols. Quality assurance protocols. Technical terminology that describes what is essentially an extension of traditional craftsmanship principles applied to modern manufacturing. You've discovered that ancient wisdom about attention to detail and commitment to excellence translates perfectly to contemporary business challenges. The conversation turns to expansion opportunities that would establish your consulting services in foreign markets, creating partnerships that honour Japanese expertise while serving international needs. The proposals involve substantial financial investment but offer potential returns that could secure your family's prosperity for generations. Your son takes notes with the focused attention of someone who understands that these discussions will shape his professional inheritance. His business education has prepared him for complexities that your traditional training never addressed, but his foundation rests on values that your experience has proven commercially viable. Father, he says during a brief break in the multilingual negotiations, these opportunities could establish our family name in international business permanently. Your reputation becomes our greatest asset. Your reputation, built through 7 years of consistent quality, honest dealing, and successful problem-solving that bridges cultural differences, the intangible wealth that matters more than financial capital in relationships that span continents and cultures. The evening concludes with agreements that require weeks of legal documentation, but rest fundamentally on mutual trust that has developed through years of reliable performance. Business cards are exchanged with ceremonies that blend Western efficiency with Japanese respect for relationship building. Walking home through streets where electric lights now outnumber lanterns, you reflect on how dramatically your relationship with change has evolved. What once felt like reluctant adaptation now feels like strategic innovation, finding ways to honour tradition while embracing opportunities that tradition alone could never provide. Your wife waits with news that adds another dimension to your family's ongoing transformation. The mayor's office contacted us about participating in a delegation to the World's Fair in Chicago, she announces, her voice carrying excitement mixed with amazement that such opportunities have become part of your reality. The World's Fair, an international exhibition where Japan will showcase its culture and capabilities to audiences from around the globe. Your inclusion in the delegation recognizes your role in demonstrating how traditional values can enhance rather than hinder international commerce. They want you to explain how former samurai have contributed to Japan's economic development, she continues. Apparently your story has attracted attention from government officials who see it as evidence of successful national adaptation. Your story as evidence of national adaptation. The personal becomes political, the individual transformation representing broader social evolution. You've become unintentionally symbolic of Japan's ability to modernize without losing essential character. The invitation requires careful consideration. Public speaking about personal experiences involves exposing private struggles to public examination, risking misinterpretation by audiences who might not understand the complexity of choices that seem simple only in retrospect. But the opportunity also offers a platform for explaining how adaptation serves preservation, how change can strengthen rather than weaken cultural identity. Other nations face similar challenges as traditional societies encounter modern pressures, and Japan's experience might provide useful guidance. Your son enthusiastically supports participation in the delegation, seeing it as validation of educational choices that have prepared him for international engagement. Your wife views it as recognition of family sacrifices that have contributed to something larger than personal advancement. That night, you compose a letter to Yamada-san, now successfully managing a textile export business that employs 12 former samurai in various capacities. His transformation paralleled yours, though his path involved different challenges and different discoveries about capabilities that military training had unexpectedly prepared. We have become, you write, not failed warriors but successful pioneers, demonstrating that evolution serves survival better than extinction serves honour. The words capture something essential about your generation's experience. You haven't abandoned samurai values. You've expanded their application beyond military context to serve peaceful purposes that strengthen communities and families. Your consulting business has grown beyond individual survival to employ 8 people, including 4 former samurai who have discovered that attention to detail and commitment to excellence create competitive advantages in quality-conscious markets. The irony no longer tastes bitter. Traditional training has proven more commercially valuable than anyone expected, though not in ways that anyone predicted. Discipline, integrity, and analytical thinking serve business purposes as effectively as they once served military ones. You review contracts and correspondence that arrive from trading partners whose geographic diversity would have amazed your ancestors. Letters from San Francisco describe opportunities in American markets. Documents from London outline potential partnerships with British manufacturers. Proposals from Hamburg suggest expansion into European distribution networks. Each communication represents relationships built on proven reliability rather than inherited status. Trust earned through performance rather than granted through birthright. The new world rewards competence over ancestry, creating opportunities for anyone willing to develop relevant capabilities. Your katana remains in its honoured place, but it's now accompanied by business awards, client testimonials, and photographs documenting successful international negotiations. The sword represents foundation rather than limitation, tradition that enables innovation rather than preventing it. Tomorrow will bring challenges that require the same essential qualities that define samurai excellence. Courage to face uncertainty, wisdom to distinguish between necessary change and harmful compromise, strength to adapt without losing core identity. You've discovered that true honour lies not in preserving the past unchanged, but in ensuring that the best of the past serves the needs of the present and future. 10 years have passed since that rain-soaked morning when your identity felt as fragile as wet paper, and your future seemed as uncertain as weather patterns. Today you sit in your expanded office, now occupying an entire building that houses your consulting firm, watching your son conduct negotiations with clients whose accents carry stories from continents your ancestors never imagined visiting. The transformation extends beyond personal success to encompass broader social change that your generation helped pioneer. Former samurai now work in banks, teach in universities, manage factories, and serve in government positions that blend traditional wisdom with modern requirements. What began as desperate individual adaptation has become recognised social evolution. Your latest project involves establishing training programs for the Meiji government, teaching quality control and international business practices to civil servants who will implement national economic development policies. The work represents everything your journey has taught you about adaptation, preserving valuable traditions while embracing necessary innovations. Father, your son says, entering your office with the documents that require your review, the Ministry of Education wants to include our training methods in the new commercial curriculum for former samurai. Commercial curriculum for former samurai. Official recognition that your path from warrior to businessman to Uesu represents valuable knowledge rather than unfortunate necessity. The government has realised that traditional discipline and modern commerce create powerful combinations when properly integrated. The curriculum proposal rests on your desk alongside correspondence from international partners, government commissions, and academic institutions that study Japan's rapid modernisation. Your personal experience has become case study material for understanding how traditional societies can adapt to modern pressures without losing essential character. Your role has evolved from desperate survivor to recognised expert, from reluctant adapter to sought-after advisor. The transformation proves that crisis can catalyse discovery rather than merely causing loss, revealing capabilities that stable circumstances never demand. This afternoon brings a visitor whose presence completes a circle that began 10 years ago with difficult choices between pride and survival. Thompson-san, The Western merchant who first taught you that commerce could honour quality while generating profit arrives to discuss establishing permanent partnership between your firm and his international trading network. Your reputation has reached California and London, Mo, he explains through translation, that your son now provides with professional fluency. We want to formalise relationships that have proven mutually beneficial. Mutually beneficial relationships. The phrase captures something essential about your approach to business that distinguishes it from purely transactional commerce. Traditional values about long-term obligation and mutual respect have created commercial advantages that short-term profit maximization never achieves. The proposed partnership involves substantial financial commitments, but offers opportunities for expansion that could establish your family firm as a permanent bridge between Japanese craftsmanship and international markets. Success measured not just in immediate profits, but in sustainable relationships that serve multiple generations. Your son participates in negotiations with confidence that reflects his education in both traditional values and modern business practices. His perspective combines respect for established relationships with awareness of emerging opportunities, creating strategic thinking that honours the past while preparing for the future. Evening brings time for reflection on a journey that has exceeded every optimistic projection you might have made during those desperate early months. Financial security that seemed impossible has become sustainable prosperity. Social respect that felt lost forever has been rebuilt on new foundations. Your wife reviews household accounts that now include savings allocated for your son's graduate education abroad, investments in business expansion, and contributions to community organisations that assist other families navigating similar transitions. The numbers tell stories about prosperity shared rather than hoarded. Mrs. Suzuki mentioned that her nephew is considering leaving his government position to start an export business, she says while updating records. That track financial growth with meticulous precision learned through years of careful resource management. Her nephew considering export business. Another former samurai contemplating commercial ventures that previous generations would have considered beneath their dignity. The social transformation that your individual choices helped initiate continues expanding through extended networks of family and community connections. You write responses to correspondence that arrives from former training partners who have found their own paths through the economic transformation. Yamda-san now manages a textile cooperative that employs 30 people. Sato-san has established a translation service that helps foreign businesses understand Japanese market requirements. Each letter represents successful adaptation that honours traditional values while serving contemporary needs. Your generation has proven that evolution doesn't require abandoning identity. It requires expanding identity to encompass new possibilities. That night, you compose a letter to future generations who might face similar challenges as the world continues changing in ways that no one can predict. The letter explains lessons learned through experience rather than instruction, insights gained through necessity rather than choice. Honour, you write, doesn't depend on preserving specific roles unchanged through time. Honour depends on applying essential principles to whatever circumstances require service, courage, integrity, attention. Honour, you write, doesn't depend on preserving specific roles unchanged through time. Honour depends on applying essential principles to whatever circumstances require service, courage, integrity, attention to detail, commitment to excellence. These qualities serve any generation facing uncertainty. The letter becomes longer than intended, expanding into detailed advice about recognizing opportunity within crisis, maintaining dignity during transformation, and building new identities without abandoning core values. Your words carry weight earned through experience rather than inherited through position. You seal the letter in an envelope marked for your future grandchildren, adding it to a collection of documents that record your family's journey through historical transition. The archive includes business contracts, family photographs, correspondence with international partners, and certificates recognizing achievements that seemed impossible during those desperate early years. Your katana still occupies its place of honor, but it's now surrounded by evidence of successful adaptation rather than symbols of lost glory. The sword represents foundation rather than limitation, tradition that enables innovation rather than preventing it. Tomorrow will bring the formal signing of partnership agreements that establish your consulting firm as a permanent bridge between Japanese expertise and international markets. The ceremony will blend Western business protocols, with Japanese respect for relationship building, creating new traditions that honour both cultures. As you prepare for sleep, you reflect on a transformation that has exceeded every optimistic projection you might have made during those uncertain early months. The last samurai didn't die in battle. They learned to live in peace, finding honour in adaptation and strength in service to changing times. 15 years after your first tentative steps into commercial life, you stand before an audience of government officials, foreign dignitaries and business leaders gathered to witness the opening of the International Trade Institute, a school designed to train the next generation of Japanese professionals in global commerce. The building itself tells the story of successful cultural integration, traditional architectural elements supporting modern functionality. Your role as founding director represents recognition that your personal transformation has broader significance for Japan's economic development. The Institute will teach courses that blend traditional Japanese values with international business practices, creating educational programs that honour cultural heritage while preparing students for global careers. Today we demonstrate that tradition and progress need not be enemies, you tell the assembled crowd, your words translated simultaneously into English, French and German for the benefit of foreign observers. We show that ancient wisdom can serve modern purposes when applied with intelligence and flexibility. The speech draws on 15 years of experience bridging cultural differences, solving commercial problems, and training others to navigate similar challenges. Your personal journey from desperate adaptation to confident innovation has become a template for national development strategies. In the audience, you recognise faces that tell stories of their own successful transformations. Former samurai who now manage banks, teach in universities, serve in diplomatic missions, and lead manufacturing enterprises that export Japanese products to markets around the world. Your generation has proven that evolution serves survival better than resistance serves pride. Your son, now graduated from university with honours in international business, sits with representatives from trading companies that compete to recruit graduates from programs that didn't exist when your transformation began. His education combines traditional Japanese values with modern commercial knowledge, creating capabilities that serve both local and global markets. The ceremony concludes with the unveiling of a plaque that dedicates the Institute to the samurai who learned that honour lies not in preserving the past unchanged, but in ensuring that the best of the past serves the needs of the present and future. The words capture something essential about your generation's contribution to Japan's modernisation. After the formal events, you meet privately with government officials who seek advice on policy matters that affect Japan's continuing economic development. Your consulting firm has become an informal think tank, providing insights based on practical experience rather than theoretical knowledge. Your success demonstrates possibilities that we want to replicate nationally, explains a Ministry of Education official, whose questions reveal sophisticated understanding of the challenges facing traditional societies in modern times. How do we preserve cultural identity while embracing necessary change? The question touches fundamental issues that your personal experience has taught you to approach with nuance rather than simple answers. Cultural identity doesn't require preserving specific practices unchanged through time. It requires maintaining essential values while adapting their expression to the contemporary circumstances. Your response draws on 15 years of watching traditional craftsmanship evolve to serve international markets, seeing former warriors discover commercial capabilities, and observing how adaptation can strengthen rather than weaken cultural foundations when approached with wisdom and patience. Evening brings a reception where conversations flow between languages as smoothly as wine flows between glasses. Foreign diplomats, Japanese business leaders, and international traders discuss opportunities for cooperation that honour different cultural approaches while serving mutual economic interests. Your wife circulates among guests with confidence that reflects 15 years of gradual adaptation to social situations that would have seemed impossible during your desperate early period. Her traditional dress creates elegant contrast with Western evening wear, demonstrating how cultural differences can enhance rather than complicate social interaction. Mrs. Wilson from the British Embassy mentioned opportunities for cultural exchange programs, as she tells you during a quiet moment between conversations. Apparently other countries want to learn from Japan's approach to modernisation. Cultural exchange programs. International recognition that Japan's transformation offers valuable lessons for other societies facing similar pressures to modernize without losing essential character. Your personal suicide has become part of a larger narrative about successful adaptation. The evening's conversations include discussions about establishing branch offices of the Trade Institute in other countries, creating educational programs that teach Japanese approaches to quality, relationship building and long-term thinking. Traditional values packaged for international consumption. You find yourself explaining concepts that seemed obvious until you tried to translate them across cultural boundaries. How attention to detail creates competitive advantages. Why long-term relationships serve business better than short-term transactions. How discipline and patience produce results that urgency and pressure cannot achieve. The questions reveal genuine interest in understanding approaches that have proven commercially successful while maintaining cultural integrity. Your methods have attracted attention not just for their effectiveness, but for their sustainability across changing market conditions. That night you review correspondence from former students who now work in various countries, applying lessons learned at your consulting firm to challenges that span continents and cultures. Their letters describe successes that extend your influence far beyond direct personal contact. One letter arrives from a former student now managing textile exports in California, describing how Japanese attention to quality has earned premium prices in American markets. Another comes from a graduate working in London banks, explaining how traditional concepts about obligation and trust have enhanced international lending relationships. Each communication represents multiplication of your influence through people who carry forward principles you've spent 15 years learning to apply effectively. Teaching has become your most important function, ensuring that hard-won insights serve future generations facing their own adaptation challenges. Your katana maintains its place of honor, but it's now accompanied by awards from international business organizations, honorary degrees from foreign universities, and letters of appreciation from government officials in multiple countries. The sword represents continuity rather than nostalgia. Tomorrow will bring new challenges that require the same essential qualities that have guided your journey from desperate necessity to confident innovation. Courage to face uncertainty, wisdom to distinguish between valuable tradition and limiting habit, strength to change without losing essential identity. 20 years have transformed your personal consulting practice into an institution that influences economic policy across Asia. The International Trade Institute now operates campuses in 5 countries, teaching principles that emerged from your desperate adaptation, but have proven universally applicable to businesses navigating cultural transitions. This morning's board meeting includes representatives from governments, universities and corporations who recognize that your approach to bridging traditional and modern business practices creates competitive advantages that purely Western or purely Eastern methods cannot achieve. The discussions involve strategic planning that affects thousands of students and hundreds of companies. Your curriculum has produced graduates who outperform their peers in international assignments, reports the university liaison, whose statistical analysis confirms what experience has taught you about the commercial value of combining traditional discipline with modern knowledge. The data reflects something deeper than academic success. Young people who understand both their cultural heritage and contemporary business requirements navigate globalization more effectively than those educated in purely traditional or purely modern approaches. Your son, now a partner in the firm and director of international operations, presents expansion proposals that would establish training programs in countries whose names you couldn't have pronounced during your desperate early years. His presentation combines financial projections with cultural analysis, demonstrating how traditional Japanese principles adapt to different national contexts. Our approach works because it addresses fundamental human needs that transcend specific cultures. He explains to board members whose experience spans continents and industries. Respect, quality, long-term thinking, attention to detail, these values enhance business performance regardless of local conditions. The insight captures something essential at your journey, from individual survival to institutional influence. What began as personal adaptation has revealed universal principles that serve anyone facing the challenge of honouring tradition while embracing necessary change. Today's agenda includes reviewing applications from governments seeking consultation on economic development strategies that preserve cultural identity while encouraging modernisation. Your expertise has evolved from quality control and cultural translation to policy advice that affects entire nations. The irony would have seemed impossible 20 years ago. A former samurai whose sword skills became commercially irrelevant now advises countries on maintaining cultural authenticity while pursuing economic growth. The transformation proves that crisis can reveal capabilities that stability never demands. During lunch break, you meet privately with a delegation from Korea, whose modernization challenges mirror Japan's experience, but require solutions adapted to different cultural foundations. Their questions reveal sophisticated understanding of the complexity involved in preserving identity while encouraging adaptation. How do you prevent change from becoming betrayal? Asks their lead representative, voicing the concern that kept you awake during your own transition period. The question deserves an answer based on experience rather than theory. Change becomes betrayal only when it abandons essential values rather than finding new ways to express them, you reply. The key is distinguishing between methods and principles. Your response draws on 20 years of watching traditional craftsmen adapt their techniques to serve international markets without compromising their commitment to excellence. Methods evolve, but principles remain constant when properly understood and carefully applied. The afternoon brings a different sort of consultation, meeting with representatives from American universities who want to establish exchange programs that teach Western students about Japanese approaches to business relationship building, quality management, and long-term strategic thinking. Our MBA students excel at financial analysis and operational efficiency, explains the program director, whose questions reveal genuine respect for approaches that complement rather than compete with Western business education. But they struggle with relationship management and sustainable thinking. Relationship management and sustainable thinking. Skills that your traditional education emphasized, but that you never expected would become commercially valuable. The global economy has revealed the importance of capabilities that purely transactional approaches cannot provide. The discussions involve designing curricula that teach Western students how patience and relationship building create competitive advantages, how attention to detail prevents expensive mistakes, and how long-term thinking generates sustainable profits rather than short-term gains. Evening brings reflection on a journey that has exceeded every optimistic projection you might have made during those uncertain early months. Your personal transformation has become institutional influence that affects economic development strategies, educational policies, and business practices across multiple countries. Your wife reviews household accounts that now include charitable contributions to organizations assisting other families facing economic transitions, investments in educational programs for disadvantaged students, and support for cultural preservation projects that honor traditional crafts while creating contemporary economic opportunities. The mayor mentioned establishing a scholarship fund in your name. She says, while updating records that track prosperity shared rather than hoarded, for children of families adapting to economic changes, a scholarship fund in your name. Recognition that your journey from desperation to prosperity has broader significance than personal success, creating opportunities for others facing similar challenges of adaptation and identity preservation. The proposal touches you more deeply than business achievements or government recognition because it addresses the fundamental issue that motivated your original transformation, ensuring that families can maintain dignity while adapting to circumstances beyond their control. That night, you write responses to correspondence from former students now working in various countries, applying principles learned through your experience to challenges that span cultures and continents. Their letters describe successes that multiply your influence far beyond direct personal contact. One letter arrives from a graduate now advising the Vietnamese government on an industrial development that honors traditional village structures while encouraging economic modernization. Another comes from a former student working in Brazil, helping Japanese companies establish manufacturing operations that respect local customs while maintaining quality standards. Each communication represents propagation of insights gained through necessity, but proven valuable across different contexts. Your personal crisis has generated knowledge that serves anyone facing the challenge of preserving identity while embracing change. 25 years after your transformation began, you stand in your office reviewing documents that establish the Samurai Adaptation Foundation, an organization dedicated to helping traditional societies navigate modernization without losing essential cultural identity. The Foundation represents the institutionalization of lessons learned through personal experience. This morning brings visitors from 3 continents seeking guidance on preservation strategies that strengthen rather than weaken traditional communities facing economic pressures. Your expertise has evolved from individual survival to cultural sustainability, addressing challenges that affect entire civilizations. Your model demonstrates that tradition and progress can enhance each other, explains a representative from a Native American business council, whose questions reveal sophisticated understanding of the complexity involved in maintaining cultural integrity while pursuing economic development. The observation reflects something profound about your generation's contribution to understanding how societies can adapt to changing circumstances. You've proven that evolution doesn't require abandonment of essential values. It requires finding new expressions for timeless principles. Your son, now recognized internationally as an expert on cultural adaptation and economic development, presents research that documents how traditional values create competitive advantages in global markets when properly applied to contemporary challenges. Companies that combine traditional relationship building with modern efficiency consistently outperform those using purely Western or purely Eastern approaches, he reports to Foundation board members, whose experience spans academic institutions, government agencies and multinational corporations. Data confirms what your personal experience suggested. Synthesis creates capabilities that neither pure tradition nor pure modernization can achieve. The most successful adaptations honor the past while serving the present and preparing for the future. Today's agenda includes reviewing grant applications from communities seeking support for economic development projects that preserve cultural heritage while creating contemporary opportunities. The Foundation has become a bridge between traditional wisdom and modern necessity. Your role involves more than financial support. You provide strategic guidance based on 25 years of successfully navigating the tension between preservation and adaptation. The insights carry weight because they emerged from personal crisis, rather than academic theory. During the afternoon session, you address a gathering of international development specialists who seek alternatives to modernization approaches that destroy traditional communities in the name of economic progress. Your presentation draws standing ovation from audience members who recognize the significance of proving that different paths are possible. The last samurai didn't die, though you conclude your remarks. They learned to live differently, discovering that honor lies not in preserving specific roles unchanged, but in applying essential principles to whatever circumstances require service. The words capture the essence of your journey, from desperate adaptation to confident innovation, from individual survival to cultural leadership. Your personal transformation has become a template for successful navigation through historical transition. Evening brings a reception where conversations include representatives from indigenous communities, traditional craftsmen, government officials, and business leaders who share common interest in sustainable development that honors cultural heritage while encouraging economic growth. Your wife, now recognized as an expert on family adaptation strategies during economic transitions, leads discussions about maintaining social cohesion while encouraging individual innovation. Her insights complement your business experience with understanding of domestic challenges that affect entire communities. The Nakamura family asked if you might speak at their son's wedding, she mentions during a quiet moment between conversations. Apparently your story has become an inspiration for young people facing their own adaptation challenges. Speaking at weddings, another unexpected role in your expanding influence, offering guidance to new generations who face different challenges but can benefit from principles learned through experience, rather than inherited through tradition. The invitation represents recognition that your journey offers hope rather than merely instruction, demonstrating that crisis can catalyze growth rather than causing only loss. Young people see in your story proof that adaptation serves strength rather than weakness. That night you review correspondence that arrives from around the world, letters from communities that have applied your foundation's principles to their own modernization challenges, reports from businesses that have implemented relationship-building approaches you've advocated, and academic studies that document the effectiveness of synthesis approaches to cultural adaptation. One particularly moving letter comes from a village in Morocco that has successfully combined traditional weaving techniques with modern marketing to create sustainable economic opportunities while preserving cultural practices. Another arrives from an Aboriginal community in Australia that has used your foundation's guidance to establish enterprises that honour traditional knowledge while generating contemporary income. Each communication represents multiplication of insights that emerge from your personal crisis, but have proven universally applicable to challenges of adaptation and identity preservation. Your individual transformation has generated knowledge that serves anyone facing similar pressures. Your katana still occupies its place of honor, but it's now surrounded by artifacts from cultures around the world, gifts from communities that have benefited from your foundation's work, symbols of successful adaptation that honor tradition while embracing change. The sword no longer represents a lost way of life, but rather the foundation upon which new possibilities have been built. Traditional discipline, attention to detail, and commitment to excellence serve contemporary purposes when applied with wisdom and flexibility. Tomorrow will bring new challenges that require the same essential qualities that have guided your 25-year journey. Courage to face uncertainty, wisdom to distinguish between valuable tradition and limiting habit, strength to change without losing essential identity. You've discovered that true honor lies not in preserving the past unchanged, but in ensuring that the best of the past serves the needs of the present and future. The last samurai became the first of something new. 30 years have passed since that rain-soaked morning, when your reflection in a puddle showed a man whose world was ending. Today, you stand before a mirror in the International Cultural Adaptation Centre, a complex of buildings that spans 5 acres and houses research facilities, training centres, and residence halls for students from 43 countries. Your reflection shows someone you've grown comfortable recognising. Silver-haired but straight-backed, wearing clothes that blend Eastern and Western styles with the natural confidence of someone who has learned that identity can expand without fragmenting. The face carries lines earned through decades of problem-solving rather than worry. This morning marks the opening of the centre's newest facility, a museum dedicated to documenting successful cultural adaptations throughout history. Your personal story occupies one wing, but the broader collection demonstrates that your generation's experience represents part of humanity's ongoing challenge of honouring tradition while embracing necessary change. The museum's centrepiece is an interactive exhibition that allows visitors to experience decision points similar to those you faced 30 years ago, moments when choosing between pride and survival, tradition and adaptation, past certainty and future possibility determines individual and collective destiny. Your journey illustrates principles that transcend specific cultural contexts. It explains the museum director whose research has documented how traditional societies worldwide face similar challenges of modernization without loss of essential identity. The observation reflects something profound about your transformation from individual crisis to universal template. What began as desperate personal adaptation has revealed patterns that serve anyone navigating the tension between preservation and progress. Your son, now recognised internationally as a leading expert on sustainable cultural development, delivers the keynote address to an audience that includes government officials, academic researchers, and community leaders from 6 continents. His presentation combines personal family history with global policy implications. My father's transformation demonstrates that evolution serves cultures better than extinction serves pride, he tells the assembled crowd, his words translated simultaneously into 12 languages. The most successful adaptations honour essential values while finding new ways to express them. His insight captures the essence of 30 years of learning that began with selling rice and evolved into advising nations. Your personal journey has become evidence that crisis can catalyse growth when approached with courage, wisdom, and willingness to distinguish between methods and principles. The afternoon brings meetings with representatives from communities currently facing their own adaptation challenges, indigenous groups navigating resource development pressures, traditional craftsmen competing with mass production, small societies trying to maintain cultural identity while pursuing economic opportunities. Each consultation draws on 30 years of experience helping others navigate similar transitions. Your role has evolved from desperate survivor to recognised expert in the art of changing without losing essential identity. How do you maintain hope during the uncertain middle period? Asks a representative from a fishing community whose traditional livelihood faces pressure from industrial competition and environmental changes. The question touches something fundamental about the transformation process. the dark period between ending old certainties and establishing new ones, when nothing feels solid and every choice seems to risk everything important. Hope comes from understanding that adaptation serves preservation rather than replacing it, you reply, drawing on memories of your own darkest moments when the future seemed to offer only loss. The goal isn't to remain unchanged, but to ensure that essential values find new expression. Your answer reflects insights gained through experience rather than theory, wisdom earned through navigating actual uncertainty rather than studying it from academic distance. The weight of personal testing gives your words authority that mere knowledge cannot provide. Evening brings a reception where conversations flow between dozens of languages as easily as water flows between connected pools. The gathering includes people whose stories of successful adaptation span every continent and represent every conceivable form of cultural transition. Your wife, now author of 3 books on family adaptation strategies and recipient of international recognition for her work on maintaining social cohesion during economic transitions, leads discussions about the domestic aspects of cultural change that often receive less attention than economic or political dimensions. The children always adapt fastest, she observes to a group of women representing traditional communities from around the world. The challenge is helping parents navigate their own changes while supporting their children's necessary growth. Her insight reflects 30 years of watching families, including your own, discover that successful adaptation requires changes in relationships as well as circumstances. Traditional hierarchies must evolve to accommodate new knowledge and capabilities that younger generations often acquire more quickly than their elders. The conversations continue late into the evening, weaving together stories that demonstrate how human resilience expresses itself across different cultures and circumstances. Your personal journey becomes part of a larger tapestry of successful navigation through historical transition. That night you walk through the museum's halls, examining displays that document adaptation stories from around the world and throughout history. Your family's transformation occupies its place among countless examples of how individuals and communities have successfully navigated the challenge of preserving identity while embracing change. One display shows traditional Japanese swords-making techniques that have evolved to create modern steel products, while maintaining standards of excellence that honour centuries of refinement. Another documents how indigenous agricultural knowledge has enhanced modern farming practices while preserving traditional ecological wisdom. Each example demonstrates the same fundamental principle your personal experience revealed. The most successful adaptations synthesize rather than replace, combining traditional wisdom with contemporary capabilities to create possibilities that neither pure preservation nor pure modernization could achieve. Your katana, now displayed in a place of honor within the museum, represents not the end of something valuable, but the foundation upon which something new and equally valuable has been built. The sword symbolizes continuity rather than nostalgia. The museum's guestbook contains entries from visitors whose own adaptation journeys have been inspired by examples of successful navigation through cultural transition. Reading their comments reveals how your personal story has become part of a larger narrative about human capacity for growth and renewal. Tomorrow will bring new opportunities to share insights gained through 30 years of learning that began with desperate necessity and evolved into confident expertise. The principles remain constant even as applications continue expanding. 35 years after your transformation began, you stand in the completed memorial garden dedicated to those who adapted with honour, a space where traditional landscape design creates a contemplative environment for reflecting on the nature of change, preservation, and the courage required to choose evolution over extinction. The garden's design tells the story of successful transformation through living metaphor. Ancient trees provide stability and continuity while new plantings represent growth and adaptation. Paths wind between traditional stone arrangements and contemporary water features, creating harmony between historical and modern aesthetics. Your morning walk through the garden has become ritual that provides perspective on a journey that began with desperate survival and evolved into institutional influence affecting cultural development policies worldwide. The peaceful environment offers space for contemplating lessons that crisis taught and prosperity has confirmed. Today marks the dedication of the garden's centerpiece, a monument honoring your generation of former samurai, who proved that honour lies not in preserving specific roles unchanged, but in applying essential principles to whatever circumstances require service. The inscription captures insights gained through experience rather than inherited through tradition. The ceremony includes representatives from every continent, testimony to how your personal transformation has influenced thinking about cultural adaptation across different societies and historical contexts. Speeches delivered in multiple languages celebrate the universal significance of learning to change without losing essential identity. Your son, now Director of the Global Institute for Cultural Sustainability, presents research documenting how adaptation approaches developed through your experience have been successfully applied to challenges facing traditional communities worldwide. The data confirms what personal experience suggested about the universal applicability of synthesis approaches. Traditional wisdom enhanced by contemporary knowledge creates capabilities that neither pure preservation nor pure modernization can achieve. He reports to an audience that includes policymakers, academic researchers, and community leaders whose work spans every conceivable form of cultural transition. The research validates 35 years of believing that your individual journey offered insights relevant beyond personal circumstances. What began as desperate adaptation has generated knowledge that serves anyone facing the challenge of honouring tradition while embracing necessary change. The afternoon brings private time for reflection in your study, surrounded by documents that chronicle your transformation from struggling individual to recognised expert in the art of cultural adaptation. Letters from around the world describe communities that have successfully applied principles learned through your experience. One particularly meaningful communication arrives from a village in Scotland that has used your foundation's guidance to revitalise traditional wool production while meeting contemporary market demands. Another comes from a Native American community that has combined ancestral knowledge with modern business practices to create sustainable economic opportunities. Each letter represents multiplication of insights that emerged from personal crisis but have proven universally applicable to challenges of adaptation and identity preservation. Your individual transformation has generated knowledge that transcends specific cultural contexts. Your wife joins you for afternoon tea, a ritual that has provided stability throughout 35 years of continuous change and growth. Her own transformation from traditional wife to internationally recognised expert on family adaptation strategies demonstrates how supportive relationships can evolve while maintaining essential character. The granddaughter's university acceptance letter arrived, she mentions, while reviewing correspondence that reflects your family's ongoing evolution. International relations with focus on cultural preservation. Apparently, she wants to continue the family tradition of building bridges between different worlds. The granddaughter's career choice represents generational continuity expressed through contemporary application. Your transformation has influenced not just your immediate circumstances, but the trajectory of family development for generations to come. Evening brings a reception where conversations include people whose adaptation stories represent every conceivable form of cultural transition. The gathering demonstrates how individual transformations contribute to broader understanding of human capacity for growth and renewal. Among the guests is Yamada-san, your former training partner whose own adaptation journey has paralleled yours, though following different paths. His success in establishing a network of traditional craft cooperatives that serve international markets proves that multiple approaches can achieve similar objectives. We chose evolution over extinction, he observes during a quiet moment between conversations. Our swords gather dust, but our principles found new expression. His words capture something essential about your generation's contribution to understanding how societies can adapt to changing circumstances without losing fundamental character. You've proven that preservation requires adaptation rather than resistance. The evening's conversations continue late into the night, weaving together stories that demonstrate how resilience expresses itself across different cultures and circumstances. Your personal journey has become part of a larger narrative about successful navigation through historical transition. That night you review documents that establish your Legacy Foundation's endowment for supporting cultural adaptation research and community assistance programs. The financial resources ensure that insights gained through personal experience will continue serving future generations facing their own transformation challenges. The Foundation's mission statement reflects 35 years of learning, about the relationship between preservation and change, to demonstrate that honour lies not in preserving the past unchanged, but in ensuring that the best of the past serves the needs of the present and future. Your katana, now permanently displayed in the museum's place of honour, has become symbol of successful transformation rather than lost opportunity. The sword represents foundation that enabled growth rather than limitation, that prevented adaptation. Tomorrow will bring new opportunities to share wisdom gained through experience, contribute to discussions about sustainable development that honours cultural heritage, and provide guidance to communities facing their own challenges of adaptation and identity preservation. 40 years have transformed your personal crisis into a philosophy of adaptation that influences cultural development policies across the globe. Today, you sit in your study reviewing the final chapter of your memoirs, a book that documents not just personal transformation, but the universal principles that enable successful navigation through historical transition. The writing process has required revisiting memories that range from desperate early mornings, counting coins for rice, to confident recent meetings with world leaders seeking guidance on sustainable development approaches. The journey's arc reveals patterns that seemed invisible while living through individual moments, but become clear when viewed from the perspective of the completed transformation. Your reflection focuses on the central paradox that has defined your experience, how choosing change-preserved identity more effectively than resisting change could have achieved. The insight applies far beyond individual circumstances to communities, organizations, and entire societies facing similar pressures. The last samurai you write in your concluding chapter discovered that honor requires evolution rather than extinction, adaptation rather than resistance, synthesis rather than abandonment. The words capture 40 years of learning that began with desperate necessity and evolved into confident expertise. Your personal transformation has demonstrated that crisis can catalyze growth when approached with courage, wisdom, and willingness to distinguish between essential principles and specific applications. This morning brings news that your memoir will be translated into 47 languages and distributed through educational programs that teach cultural adaptation principles to communities worldwide. The book represents distillation of insights gained through experience rather than theory. Your son visits to discuss plans for the memoir's publication tour, which will include speaking engagements in countries whose names you couldn't have pronounced during your transformation's early stages. His role has evolved from translator and business partner to colleague and collaborator in work that affects global understanding of adaptation and preservation. Father, he says while reviewing the international speaking schedule, your story has become larger than personal memoir. It's become instruction manual for anyone facing the choice between evolution and extinction. His observation reflects something profound about how individual transformation can generate universal knowledge. Your personal journey has revealed principles that transcend specific cultural contexts, offering guidance to anyone navigating the tension between tradition and change. The afternoon brings final preparation for tomorrow's ceremony, marking the 40th anniversary of your transformation's beginning. The event will gather representatives from communities worldwide that have applied adaptation principles learned through your experience to their own modernization challenges. The ceremony's location, the original trading company building where your commercial career began, symbolizes the continuity that connects desperate beginning to confident present. The building has been preserved as historical landmark, recognizing the significance of individual transformation that influence broader social evolution. Your speech for tomorrow's ceremony draws on 40 years of reflection about the relationship between preservation and change, tradition and progress, individual adaptation, and collective wisdom. The address will be broadcast internationally to audiences whose own adaptation journeys have been influenced by your example. Evening brings quiet time with your wife in the garden, where traditional landscape design creates contemplative space for reflecting on a journey that began with crisis and evolved into contribution. The peaceful environment provides perspective on a transformation that seemed impossible when it began. Do you ever regret the changes, she asks during conversation that ranges across 4 decades of shared experience navigating adaptation challenges together? The question requires careful consideration. Regret suggests wishing different choices had been possible, but your experience has taught you that the alternatives available 40 years ago would have led to extinction rather than evolution. I regret the necessity, you reply after thoughtful pause, but I celebrate the possibilities that necessity revealed. Your answer reflects hard-won wisdom about the relationship between circumstances and choice, pressure and opportunity, crisis and growth. The transformation that seemed like loss has proven to be discovery of capabilities that stable circumstances never would have demanded. That night, you make final revisions to your memoir's conclusion, words that capture insights gained through 40 years of learning that began with desperate survival and evolved into confident expertise in the art of cultural adaptation. The samurai did not disappear, you write. They discovered that honour transcends specific roles, that excellence serves any worthy purpose, that courage enables adaptation as well as resistance. The words represent distillation of experience that began with individual crisis, but generated knowledge applicable to anyone facing the challenge of preserving identity while embracing necessary change. Your personal transformation has become template for successful navigation through historical transition. Your katana rests in its place of honour, no longer representing lost opportunity, but rather foundation that enabled growth. The sword symbolises continuity that connects traditional values with contemporary applications, ancient wisdom with modern circumstances. Tomorrow's ceremony will mark not the end of something valuable, but the completion of its transformation into something equally valuable, though entirely different. The last samurai became the first of something new, proof that evolution serves preservation better than resistance serves pride. The principles remain eternal, even as applications continue evolving, to meet challenges that each generation must face with courage, wisdom, and faith in human capacity for growth and renewal. 50 years after your transformation began, you stand at the window of your study overlooking a city that has become a living testament to successful cultural adaptation. Traditional architecture rises alongside modern buildings in harmony that seemed impossible when your journey started, creating urban landscape that honours history while embracing progress. Your reflection in the window shows a man whose long life has spanned one of history's most dramatic periods of cultural transition. The face carries wisdom earned through navigating actual uncertainty rather than studying it from academic distance, authority that comes from successful transformation rather than inherited position. This morning brings preparation for your final major public address, a speech to the United Nations about cultural preservation strategies that strengthen rather than weaken traditional communities facing modernisation pressures. Your insights will inform international development policies affecting millions of people worldwide. The speech represents culmination of 50 years of learning that began with desperate personal adaptation and evolved into recognised expertise in the art of preserving identity while embracing change. Your individual transformation has generated knowledge that serves humanity's ongoing challenge of honouring tradition while preparing for the future. Your great-granddaughter visits to help prepare for the UN presentation, bringing energy and perspective that represent the fourth generation influenced by your transformation. Her doctoral research on sustainable cultural development continues family tradition of building bridges between different worlds. Great-grandfather, she says while reviewing your speech notes, your story proves that crisis can catalyse growth when approached with courage and wisdom. Each generation faces this same challenge in different forms. Her insight reflects understanding that transcends academic knowledge, wisdom that comes from growing up in family, where adaptation and preservation have been successfully synthesized. Your transformation has influenced not just immediate circumstances, but the trajectory of generational development. The afternoon brings visitors from around the world seeking final consultation on adaptation challenges their communities face. Your role has evolved from desperate survivor to elder statesman whose insights carry weight earned through successful navigation of cultural transition. Among today's visitors is a delegation from a Pacific Island nation whose traditional culture faces pressure from climate change and economic globalization. Their questions reveal sophisticated understanding of the complexity involved in maintaining cultural identity, while adapting to circumstances beyond local control. How do you preserve what matters most when everything must change? Asks her cultural minister, voicing the fundamental challenge that your experience has taught you to approach with nuance, rather than simple answers. The question touches the heart of 50 years of learning about the relationship between preservation and adaptation. Your response draws on decades of watching traditional practices evolve to serve contemporary needs without losing essential character. What matters most, you reply, are the principles that guide behaviour rather than the specific forms that express them. Honour, excellence, respect, attention to detail. These values can serve any generation facing any circumstances. Your answer reflects hard-won wisdom about distinguishing between methods and principles, temporary applications and eternal values. The insight has guided your 50-year journey from individual crisis to international influence. Evening brings time for reflection in the memorial garden where traditional landscape design creates contemplative space for considering a transformation that began with desperate necessity and evolved into confident contribution to human understanding of adaptation and preservation. Your wife joins you for the evening walk that has become ritual, providing stability throughout 5 decades of continuous change and growth. Her own transformation from traditional roles to international recognition demonstrates how supportive relationships can evolve while maintaining essential character. The Foundation received another proposal today, she mentions, while updating you on correspondence that reflects ongoing global interest in adaptation principles your experience has generated. A community in Greenland wants guidance on preserving indigenous knowledge while developing sustainable economic opportunities. Greenland. Evidence that insights gained through personal transformation have achieved truly global relevance, applicable to challenges facing traditional communities regardless of geographic location or specific cultural context. That night, you complete final revisions to your UN speech, words that distill 50 years of learning about successful navigation through historical transition. The address will be your final major contribution to international understanding of cultural adaptation and preservation. The samurai learned, you write in your conclusion, that extinction and evolution are choices rather than inevitable outcomes. Every generation faces this same decision: resist change and die, or adapt with honour and discover new possibilities for expressing eternal values. The words represent synthesis of experience that began with individual crisis, but generated insights applicable to humanity's ongoing challenge of preserving identity while embracing necessary change. Your personal transformation has become template for successful cultural adaptation. Your katana, now permanently housed in the International Museum of Cultural Adaptation, symbolises not loss, but transformation. Proof that traditional excellence can find new expression when applied with wisdom and flexibility. The sword represents foundation rather than limitation. Your final major speech to the United Nations brings together representatives from 93 countries whose communities face various forms of the same fundamental challenge you encountered 50 years ago: how to preserve cultural identity while adapting to circumstances that demand change. The Assembly Hall contains humanity's collective wisdom about governance and cooperation, but your insights add practical knowledge about individual and community transformation. Honourable delegates, you begin, your voice carrying the authority of someone who has successfully navigated the journey from traditional certainty to adaptive confidence. I speak to you not as a scholar of change, but as someone who has lived through transformation that seemed impossible when it began. Your address draws on 50 years of experience helping individuals and communities discover that adaptation serves preservation rather than replacing it. The speech combines personal narrative with universal principles, individual story with collective wisdom. The choice facing traditional societies is not between preservation and change, you continue, your words translated simultaneously into dozens of languages. The choice is between thoughtful adaptation that honours essential values and chaotic destruction that abandons everything valuable. The distinction reflects insights gained through decades of watching communities successfully navigate modernization pressures without losing fundamental character. Your expertise has evolved from desperate survival to recognized authority on sustainable cultural development. The audience includes representatives from indigenous communities, traditional societies, and developing nations whose adaptation challenges mirror your personal experience, though expressed through different cultural contexts. Their attention reflects understanding that your insights offer practical guidance rather than theoretical knowledge. Your presentation includes case studies from communities worldwide that have applied adaptation principles learned through your experience. Villages that have combined traditional agriculture with modern marketing. Craft cooperatives that honour ancestral techniques while serving contemporary markets. Educational programs that preserve cultural knowledge while preparing young people for global careers. Each example demonstrates the same fundamental principle your transformation revealed. Synthesis creates possibilities that neither pure preservation nor pure modernization can achieve. The most successful adaptations honour the past while serving the present and preparing for the future. The speech concludes with reflection on your generation's contribution to understanding how societies can adapt to changing circumstances without losing essential identity. Your words carry weight earned through successful navigation of actual transformation rather than academic study of change. We proved, you tell the assembled delegates, that honour requires evolution rather than extinction, adaptation rather than resistance, synthesis rather than abandonment. Every society facing modernization pressures can choose evolution with dignity rather than extinction with pride. The standing ovation that greets your conclusion reflects recognition that your insights offer hope rather than merely instruction, demonstrating that crisis can catalyze growth when approached with courage, wisdom, and willingness to distinguish between methods and principles. Following the formal address, you meet privately with delegations whose questions reveal sophisticated understanding of adaptation complexities. Their challenges span every conceivable form of cultural transition, but the underlying issues remain consistent. How to change without losing essential identity. Your responses draw on 50 years of consulting experience helping communities navigate similar transitions. The conversations involve more than providing advice. You offer living proof that successful adaptation is possible when approached with appropriate understanding and commitment. The day concludes with informal reception where conversations continue in smaller groups, allowing more detailed discussion of specific adaptation strategies. Your role has evolved from providing general principles to offering customized guidance for particular circumstances. Among the evening's conversations is extended discussion with representatives from Arctic communities whose traditional hunting culture faces pressure from climate change and resource development. Their challenges require solutions that honour ancestral knowledge while adapting to unprecedented environmental conditions. Your example gives us hope, explains their delegation leader, whose questions reveal deep understanding of the courage required to choose evolution over extinction. You prove that maintaining identity doesn't require rejecting all change. The observation touches something fundamental about your 50-year journey from individual crisis to international influence. Your transformation has become evidence that adaptation can strengthen rather than weaken cultural foundations when approached with wisdom and patience. That evening, you walk through New York streets that buzz with energy from every corner of the world, creating an urban environment where countless adaptation stories intersect. The diversity reflects humanity's ongoing challenge of preserving distinct identities while participating in global civilization. Your hotel room overlooks Central Park, where traditional landscape design creates peaceful space within modern urban context. The view provides metaphor for your life's work, demonstrating how traditional wisdom can enhance, rather than complicate contemporary circumstances. You spend the evening responding to messages from communities around the world whose adaptation journeys have been influenced by your example. Each communication represents multiplication of insights that emerge from personal crisis, but have proven universally applicable to challenges of cultural preservation and change. Tomorrow will bring the journey home to Japan, where your transformation began 50 years ago with desperate choices between pride and survival. The return offers opportunity for reflection on a journey that has exceeded every optimistic projection you might have made during those uncertain early months. Your return to Japan after the United Nations address brings you full circle to the village where your transformation began 50 years ago. The train journey from Tokyo passes through landscapes that tell the story of successful cultural adaptation. Traditional rice fields worked with modern equipment, ancient temples surrounded by contemporary communities, old and new existing in harmony, that seemed impossible when your journey started. The village itself has evolved just as dramatically as your personal circumstances. Traditional architecture has been preserved while Structure has been modernised, creating a community environment that honours history while serving contemporary needs. The changes reflect broader social transformation that your generation helped pioneer. Your childhood home, now preserved as historical landmark, recognising the significance of individual transformation that influenced broader social evolution, stands as testimony to the possibility of choosing evolution over extinction. The building represents not nostalgia, but foundation upon which new possibilities have been built. Standing in the courtyard where you once practiced sword forms with desperate intensity, you reflect on a journey that began with crisis and evolved into contribution exceeding every optimistic projection you might have made during those uncertain early months. The space holds memories that span the entire arc of transformation. Your great-granddaughter accompanies you on this final pilgrimage, bringing perspective that represents the fourth generation influenced by your choices 50 years ago. Her presence demonstrates how individual transformation can affect family trajectory for generations to come. Great-grandfather she says while examining the garden, where traditional landscape design creates contemplative space for reflection. This is where it all began, where you chose adaptation over extinction. Her observation captures something essential about the relationship between place and transformation, individual choice and collective possibility. Your decision to change rather than resist created ripple effects that continue expanding through time and space. The afternoon brings meeting with village elders whose own adaptation journeys have paralleled yours, though following different paths. Their stories demonstrate how multiple approaches can achieve similar objectives, preserving essential values while adapting to changing circumstances. Among them is the son of the rice merchant who once treated your request for credit with the calculated indifference of someone who knew that tradition no longer guaranteed payment. His father's shop has evolved into a successful agricultural cooperative that serves both local and international markets. Your transformation showed us possibilities we never imagined, he explains while serving tea and ceremony that blends traditional hospitality with contemporary comfort. You proved that honour could find new expression, rather than requiring preservation unchanged. Conversation continues through the afternoon, weaving together stories that demonstrate how individual courage can inspire community transformation. Your personal journey has become part of village history, evidence of successful navigation through cultural transition. Evening brings final ceremony in the temple where your ancestors are remembered, creating connection between past and present that honours tradition while acknowledging change. The ritual provides closure for a journey that began with desperate survival and evolved into confident contribution to human understanding. Your speech to the assembled community draws on 50 years of reflection about the relationship between preservation and adaptation, individual transformation and collective wisdom. The words carry weight earned through successful navigation of actual uncertainty rather than theoretical knowledge. We learned, you tell the gathering, that includes 4 generations of families whose adaptation journeys have been influenced by your example, that the last samurai was not the end of something valuable, but the beginning of something equally valuable, though entirely different. The insight reflects hard-won wisdom about the nature of historical transition, the relationship between crisis and opportunity, the possibility of choosing evolution over extinction when faced with certain circumstances that demand change. The ceremony concludes with presentation of your final gift to the community, establishment of scholarship funds supporting young people whose education combines traditional values with contemporary knowledge, ensuring that synthesis approaches to cultural adaptation continue serving future generations. That night, you sit in meditation in the room where your transformation began 50 years ago with desperate choices between pride and survival. The space holds memories that span the entire arc of change, from resistance through acceptance to confident mastery of adaptation principles. Your reflection focuses on the central paradox that has defined your experience: how choosing change preserved identity more effectively than resisting change could have achieved. The insight applies far beyond individual circumstances to communities, organisations, and entire societies facing similar pressures. The meditation extends through the hours before dawn, providing time for contemplating a journey that has revealed patterns seeming invisible while living through individual moments but becoming clear when viewed from the perspective of the completed transformation. As sunrise illuminates the garden where traditional landscape design creates harmony between ancient and modern elements, you experience profound satisfaction that comes from contributing to human understanding of successful navigation through historical transition. Your transformation from Last Samurai to First of Something New has proven that honour lies not in preserving the past unchanged, but in ensuring that the best of the past serves the needs of the present and future. The circle is complete, but the spiral continues expanding through time and space, touching lives and communities whose own adaptation journeys will carry forward insights gained through your experience. The Last Samurai discovered that endings can become beginnings when approached with courage, wisdom, and faith in human capacity for growth and renewal. Your legacy lives not in resistance to change, but in demonstration that evolution serves honour better than extinction serves pride. The morning sun fully illuminates the village as you prepare to leave this place of beginnings for the final time. Your walking stick, carved from bamboo that grew in this very courtyard, supports steps that carry the weight of 50 years' wisdom earned through transformation that seemed impossible when it began. Your great-granddaughter walks beside you toward the train station, her presence representing continuity that connects your desperate early choices with possibilities you never could have imagined. The path leads past familiar landmarks that have witnessed your complete metamorphosis from struggling survivor to recognised sage. At the station platform, you turn for one last look at the village that shaped both your ending and your beginning. The view encompasses everything your journey has taught, that honour transcends specific roles, that excellence serves any worthy purpose, that courage enables adaptation as surely as it enables resistance. The train to Tokyo is arriving, your great-granddaughter announces, though both of you understand that this departure represents more than simple travel between destinations. As the modern express pulls into the station with efficiency that your ancestors never could have conceived, you step aboard carrying nothing but memories and everything that matters, proof that the human spirit can choose evolution over extinction, growth over stagnation, hope over despair. Through the window, the village disappears into distance, but the lessons learned there will continue expanding through time and space, touching lives and communities whose own adaptation journeys will carry forward insights gained through your experience. The Last Samurai became the first of something new, demonstrating that true immortality lies not in preserving the past unchanged, but in ensuring that the best of human wisdom serves each generation's unique challenges with eternal principles applied through temporary forms. Your transformation is complete, but the story continues in every person who chooses courage over comfort, adaptation over resistance, evolution over extinction. The circle closes, but the spiral ascends, carrying ancient wisdom into infinite tomorrows.